In so-called developed materialist societies like ours, with their focus on individualism and wealth creation and constant consumption, the notion of the Bodhisattva can seem idealistic, a bit old-fashioned, even quaint. Bodhisattva, an awakening person, one whose goal is to wake up fully to reality, so as to be of most benefit to others, using the very experiences of daily life, the things that challenge and trigger us, as a path to free ourselves from confusion and suffering, and so to free others. It's a bold aspiration. Joseph Campbell called a bodhisattva someone who participates joyfully in the sorrows of the world. And in that definition lies the very paradox of the bodhisattva aspiration. Human life is full of challenge and change and sorrow. And yet, in embracing that reality, there's the possibility of joy. It's almost counterintuitive until we study what the Buddha, Shakyamuni, and quantum physicists point out. Namely, that the reality of our existence is change. Nothing remains the same. Nothing exists inherently. Yet everything, every event, every being is connected through intricate causes and conditions. Spinoza called that being a lover of what is. And what is in today's world is endless flux and unknowability and paradox. In modern language of management, it's called VUCA. The world is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. But it's always been this way. It just feels more so today, doesn't it? That's probably why the word unprecedented is so popular at the moment. So the Bodhisattva mind is a mind that grapples with these truths. Everything changes. Nothing has lasting existence. Everything is the result of interrelated causes and conditions. And every being is a potential Buddha. And that was the radical insight of the Buddha, that every being has the capacity to be awake, alert, and to understand truth. And that is the truth of the spacious, luminous nature of mind. And here I'm using the word mind in the Eastern sense of heart-mind, the continuum and inseparability of our own being from the whole of the universe. Sometimes these truths are rather inconvenient, yet bodhisattvas in progress continue to face them, and they employ a wonderful practice to help them do this. It's called bodhicitta. Again, bodhi meaning awakening, and citta, heart-mind. It's a motivation, a method, and a result all rolled into one. A kind of superpower that is always available to us free of charge if we're willing to make use of whatever we encounter in daily life to become more awake. Stuff happens. We react with emotion. Yet that very reactivity can be transformed into the wisdom of compassion when we remind ourselves of our bodhisattva aspiration to reduce suffering in the world. So bodhicitta is a big wish to be a bodhisattva, an awake person in all circumstances. As a psychologist, I've tackled the enigma of bodhicitta for years, the extraordinary way that shifting our attention from ourselves to a bigger framework of not just me, but all beings, can have such a radical effect on our minds, our emotions, and our behavior. Western psychology tends to solidify the self, boosting it, empowering it, managing it, etc. So I had to look to Eastern thought for an understanding of the psychology of bodhicitta and the deep interbeing beyond self that underlies it. One of my Buddhist teachers says being a bodhisattva is not about being a nice guy or a nice gal. It's about being relentlessly, ruthlessly honest, raw, and truthful. And bodhicitta is the alchemy you need for this bodhisattva practice of fearlessly facing reality. Reminding yourself constantly that I'm here to free others from suffering by freeing myself from the confusion that comes from ignoring what we really are, Buddhas in the making, whose sky-like nature of mind is only temporarily obscured by the clouds of doubt and confusion. The intention to free ourselves from this stormy weather is the bodhicitta game changer. With this motivation in mind, everything we do can be beneficial. Every tricky situation, even when we face challenging people or even abusive people, can give us an opportunity to practice this bodhicitta mindset. As Michelle Obama famously said, when they go low, we go high. Going high is having a bigger view of reality and a big vision of what is possible. Kindness is possible. Harmony is possible. Peace is possible. Not easy, but possible. Why? Because innately we all have this pure natural mind, like clear light, spacious and luminous. All we need to do is align ourselves with that mind of clarity and light again and again. I lived half my life in Asia, and I met some wonderful bodhisattvas in action there. I met His Majesty Jigme Singye, the fourth king of Bhutan, who inspired gross national happiness, which became his country's guiding policy framework. I met the filmmaker and meditation master Kensei Nobu, whose movies provoke insight and understanding. But I wanted to find some bodhisattvas in action closer to home in Australia. And in 2018, I went to a talk at the Art Gallery of New South Wales that answered my question about local bodhisattvas. It was given by Dr. Janara Goring and was about her PhD thesis entitled Jakirpa Pulka, The Road to Eldership, How Aboriginal Cultures Create Sacred Leaders. It blew me away. In the last 230 years, there have been so many challenges for Aboriginal communities. But Janara showed us that over 60,000 years, her people had lived sustainably and equitably on this vast continent and had developed a very sophisticated process for educating their children and nurturing leaders based on the fundamental principle of caring for each other and country, the earth that sustains everything. So despite the profound disruption and trauma of invasion, theft of land, displacement, stolen children, Aboriginal society has produced extraordinary leaders. First Nations culture and the law underpinning it is still alive and could offer some very useful practices for modern day Australia as it faces its many social and environmental crises, especially a crisis of empathy. Janara's thesis challenged the lens through which Europeans first viewed Aboriginal culture, the dominant colonialist paradigm of leadership based on European military and institutional hierarchies of power and authority. Then she unfolded the extraordinary wisdom of the Aboriginal paradigm of sacred leadership called eldership. telling us that sacred leadership requires integrative thinking about the self, others, and the world, which inspires others to follow. It is about going beyond being egocentric and dependent to reach a higher order of consciousness. This sacred eldership is grounded in practices of kanyini, the law of harmony and unconditional respect for life, a thread of connectedness, caring, and responsibility that links family and kinship, spirit and country. Dadiri, the deep listening from being at home in the silence of country, in the desert or in the bush. Jungunghu, the shared caring and restraint, ensuring that your anger and negativity is not transferred to others and out into the world. And most of all, from this notion, this deep notion of country, the land as teacher, as nourisher and benefactor, and source of ecological consciousness. Despite poverty and suffering, elders, Indigenous elders, have a deep capacity to be available to anyone, Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. They have a presence that transforms people. And Janara shared this story of one elder. As he told them his story, the power, the forgiveness, his simplicity left many speechless. He was a sacred being and he embodied it in his way of being, and yet he made no issue of it. He was just being the way he always was with anyone, whether a child or a prime minister. She went on to say that elders in Indigenous society are not elected or appointed, but an elder is one who has mastered practices of humility and managing the ego in relationships, the ability to resolve conflicts, to create cooperation and unity, to be tolerant and make wise decisions. Eldership is a way of knowing and being and doing where thoughts, words, and actions are embodied consistently. The anthropologist William Stanner called this high culture, recognizing its profound principles. And I would suggest that the core principle of eldership is akin to bodhicitta, the wish for the well-being of the whole community and the land and natural world that sustains it. As an elder and scientist from WA, from Western Australia, Dr. Anne Polina said, "We are all Indigenous to Mother Earth. It is a great honor and privilege to be a human being. We need to build an ethics of care and love of Earth, of nature and country." And another elder whom Janara had interviewed, Kumanara Randall, said, "In our culture, becoming an elder can be likened to being on a path of enlightenment, as the Buddhists say. It took me 45 years to not be angry and know about being peaceful, especially with things I've done in my life and the people and the way people treated us." Like Kumanara, becoming a bodhisattva is a work in progress for me, a daily act of self-leadership from the inside out, a lifetime project with plenty of advances and failures on the way. It's an act of joyous participation in life, even when life delivers uncertainty, change, challenge, and sorrow, as it surely will. I have to remind myself of that many times a day. So I'd like to leave you, if I may, with an invitation to visit the Uluru Statement from the Heart at www.fromtheheart.com.au if you haven't already read this statement. It is perhaps the most inspiring of all Australia's responses to crises, a gift to all Australians to come together in truth, to heal and make whole our country for all its people and for Mother Earth. I wish you all well on your journey too. Keep going. Thank you.